When our next guest was working in the Obama White House, he thought he knew exactly who he was, where he came from, and where he was going. That is, until a call about his ailing grandmother brought him home and everything changed. He writes about it in his new book, his new memoir, Too Precious to Lose. Jason Green joins us to take us inside the pages. Hey, Jason, good morning to
Hey,
you.
Paige, good to see you. How are you?
I am great. You know, we have something in common. Both of us are preacher's kids.
Oh, PK, I know you're in
Yeah,
the front
know,
row, cleaning
I
up
love
early.
it.
Yeah,
Every single Sunday and Wednesday, as a matter of fact. So
amen.
you were a special assistant to the President Obama inside the White House. What was it about that call that made you, that phone call that you received about your grandmother, that made you just drop everything and return home?
Yeah, and I'm actually in Chicago right now, preparing for the Obama Presidential Center to open. But I live in Dallas now, so I've got your copy of the book. I'll make sure I bring it to you when I'm back in the Big D
Good.
soon. And as you say, I was 4 years into serving President Obama when I got a call from my mom that my grandmother was sick and in the hospital. I thought that I was going to go spend an afternoon with her, try and encourage her. And what ended up taking me on this journey that took 10 years. My grandmother was 95 when we went into her hospital room. She passed away at 106. So we ended up having a lot of time to learn her story. And Paige, as you said, to learn my story, to understand my foundation and where I came from.
That is incredible. So this emergency call home ended up being an opportunity to spend really a decade with your grandmother and learn more about her history. So what history did she share with you, and what did she tell you to do with this information?
Two stories that really moved me and got me out of the White House. The first was how my ancestors in 1868, just 3 years after emancipation, helped found a community. For $54, they bought 3 acres of land and built the schoolhouse, the church, the cemetery, the social hall. And that to learn that in that difficult time with such little resources, that they sort of committed themselves to community was so important to me. And then to learn 100 years later, my grandmother was influential when that Black church that was founded in 1868 fell on hard financial times. Well, the night that Dr. King was assassinated, April 4th, 1968, my grandmother helped that church merge with two historically white congregations, one of which was Northern, one of which was Southern, to create an intentionally integrated congregation. And hearing that kind of blew my mind. I didn't think that my grandmother was a radical, first of all, and I didn't think
Wow.
that people would make that sort of decision. And so to see those commitments to radical acts of community showed me the importance of individual activation and the importance of dedicating oneself to those sorts of ideas.
It's got to be so exciting to realize that this entire community was built on the shoulders of your ancestors. I'm curious about not only, what you learned about their experience, especially given the time, that era when there were
Yeah.
so many challenges, what you learned about that, how that inspired you, and also maybe what you learned about yourself when you started to uncover these kind of lost secrets.
When my grandmother was telling me about the effort to build that one-room schoolhouse in 1868, right, that they committed those dollars to and built this building on the main drag. Paige, I was still a lawyer at the White House, and my whole job was to sort of risk assess things. I remember saying, Grandma, that was a pretty risky venture.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps there was a less risky way to do this. And my grandmother said to me, Jason, there weren't all these other options. Your great great grandparents looked around their community, they saw a need and took action because they were doers and doers do. And that was like the most profound yet simple statement I'd ever heard, because it helped me realize that there are people who did that in our communities, right? Our history, if you talk about the 250 years of American history, it's really a story of ordinary people committing themselves to extraordinary things. And
I
so it
love
made
that.
me say that I wanted to be on that line, right on that side of the line. I too wanted to be a doer who looked around my community, saw needs, and took action.
That line, our doers are what makes people do. Is that the line? I want you to repeat that.
Yeah, my grandmother said that there are people who look around their community, see a need, and take action because they're
Right.
doers and doers do.
And doers do. All right, what do you hope people are going to take away from this book?
First, I want people to kind of slow down and appreciate one another, right? Part of what I talk about in the beginning of the book is that Dr. King in 1967 said, where do we go from here, chaos or community? And I feel like right now people are feeling some of the chaos and the polarization, some of the disconnection. And the answer to that is community. And it requires us to really be intentional about reaching out and coming together. I also want people to decide for themselves what is too precious to lose. You were talking about Father's Day coming up. What a wonderful opportunity to say to our fathers, you are too precious to lose, and we care about your story. And here's, a book that can symbolize that, and take an opportunity to hear their story. Slow down, ask the questions, right? Collect the memories and the stories. And then lastly, I want people to connect with one another, right? How do we understand? How do we build shared values? How do we build that idea of community? It starts with being proximate with one another, and having the connections and the trust that allow us to move forward into the 251st year, right? To talk about the next 250, what we can actually build together.
In the last few seconds that we have, I can't ask you to leave without talking about the Obama Presidential Center. It opens this week. You're there for that purpose. What does that mean to you to be a part of this experience and to have been a part of his White House?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, we're so excited that that beacon of hope will exist in the South Side of Chicago. And we just want, what President Obama did for us is he called a whole generation of people into service. This idea that we're supposed to not try and save people, but try and serve people, putting our ego aside and trying to meet people where they are, to build a community where there are no red states and there are no blue states. And so this opening, I think, is exactly that, to again, try and be a beacon of hope where people can, aspire to what America can be over the next 250 years.
That's wonderful. You've been an inspiration to us. Thank you so much, Jason. We certainly do appreciate it.
So good to be with you, Paige.